And Tom, your suit is made out of gold.
Classic.
And we'll be like, gold, right?
Sure.
Maybe a broom handle?
No, I tried. It will not budge. It's like stuck.
Oh, I was worried.
Hey, guys, what's going on? We didn't get to set up our shenanigans yet.
Well, I mean, it's this.
A giant ass in the ceiling?
Yeah. It's what we were afraid of. The show is disappearing up its own ass.
It is?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the meta commentary on the meta commentary, and the meta commentary on the meta commentary on the meta commentary.
Yeah.
This is like the sort of bound to happen then. God damn it.
Yeah. Talking about it is definitely making it worse.
Okay, guys, we can't let our podcast disappear up its own ass. You know what happens when podcasts do that.
Don't even say it.
Episode paywalls. Okay. So
That was a big one.
So what? Yeah, that was a very big one. What do we do now?
We only got one choice. Give me a second. Clones, time machine.
It's getting worse.
Here it is.
A big red button?
No, not just any big red button. It kills the sketch.
Look, Eli, I know that might fix it this week, but this is a problem we have to deal with from now on.
No, Cecil. Not a sketch. The sketch. Once we push it, the show starts with music, and we don't even remember that this part of the show happened.
Wow. So this part of the show is just over?
Yep, totally gone. Guys, I see a hole.
Somebody
it's
just push the button. Just push
I'm not
it.
pushing it. It's my part of the show.
Oh, did you write this part of the show? You haven't mentioned that before. Do you?
Yeah, he hasn't
normally
mentioned
write
that
these?
Okay.
Clip clop.
Clip clap, Tom. Do you want to push the button?
Clip clop.
But Clip clap, Tom. You're from this sketch. If you push that button, you're gone too.
Clip clop.
But I don't want you to leave.
Clip clop. Clip clop. Clip clop. Clip clop. Clip clop. Clip clop.
Hello and welcome. Citation Needed, podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we are experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Cecil. Welcome to our version of Book Club, which actually borrows a lot from the rules of Fight Club. So I'm joined by Jack's stomach, heart, liver, and inflamed sense of rejection, Tom, Noah, Heath, and Eli.
Oh, man. Cecil, in 25 years of our friendship, I have never once felt more seen than right now.
I get to be the heart because I'm the most likely to attack.
And if I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times, Cecil. Just because it's red and pulsing doesn't mean it's inflamed.
I'm Heath. Hi.
Heath drinks. All right. Non-patrons, for as little as $1 an episode, you can make sure bitter, angry people who failed high school English and still have a grudge also have a future. And if you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around until the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Heath, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or book will we be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about a book called The Great Gatsby.
Okay, I read The Great Gatsby in high school, but I don't remember it. So what was The Great Gatsby?
It's a bad book.
We're in a fight already. That's it. We're in a fight already. One sentence.
It's a very bad book,
No.
but it's also required reading for just about every single high school student in the country.
Yep.
It was written by F. Scott Fitzgerald in 1923 and 1924, published in 1925, and it's one of several books that's considered to be the great American novel. It's not. It's not that. Neither is Moby Dick, by the way. Horrible.
Okay, but I'm gonna go need to scream into a closet, guys. I'll be right. I don't even know if I'll be right back. I don't. Moby Dick is fucking
That's
brilliant.
next.
Moby
That
Dick
is
is brilliant.
next.
Yes, just
Whole chapter on white.
I would say read a book, but clearly not your thing. Okay.
I don't like books. So, The Great Gatsby is the story of F. Scott Fitzgerald being a sad, obnoxious alcoholic who gets rejected by women for being a sad, obnoxious alcoholic. Except he's completely unaware of that. So, according to him, it's actually the story of his disillusionment with American society and culture, especially in New York City and Long Island during the 1920s. But again, it's just a whiny narration from an entitled white guy about him being shitty and also the people around him being shitty and capitalism being shitty. Plus, like, jazz or something.
You should just read some Bill Bryson, man. Who hurt you? He would be a happier guy.
There's a whole one about the kitchen. You
Yeah,
get
it's
that,
really
bud.
good.
Before we get into the plot of the book, I'll give you a quick background on F. First of all, he goes by F. Really bad
I
start.
don't think
He was born in
people called
Minnesota,
him
So mean.
and his family
Oh,
was relatively poor.
I didn't know it was
Thanks to
not
some money
Scott.
from his.
It could have been Scott.
Okay, well, he's Scott from now on. Thank you, Tom. So Scott was born in Minnesota. His family was relatively poor, but thanks to some money
Nothing
from
wrong
his
with that.
grandparents, young Scott was able to attend a somewhat fancy prep school in New Jersey and then Princeton University. During his time at Princeton, he met a 16-year-old debutante named Ginevra King, but her parents didn't like Scott, and the couple had to break up. He was devastated. Scott was. So he enlisted in the army during World War I, planning to die in
Good
combat.
plan.
You did, yeah.
And unfortunately for high school students ever since, that didn't happen. Instead, during basic training, he wrote a 120,000 word manuscript entitled The Romantic Egotist, hoping to become a posthumously celebrated author. Seriously, that was his plan. But the book was very bad, and also he didn't die. So that plan didn't work out.
Keith quietly moving of Scott up the list over Hitler and time machine assassination targets.
all right. Well, I don't know why he thought calling his opus "I'm a Psychopath with a Heart On" would enamor him in the minds of his future readers, but it is what it is, I guess.
So, as part of the not dying, Scott got sent to Camp Sheridan in Alabama, where he met Zelda Sayer, another rich debutante, and he fell in love again. But he was sad, poor, and drunk all the time, and Zelda told him she wouldn't marry him unless he started making some money. So he moved to New York City after the war and tried to become a novelist. And he failed because being a bad writer, he failed because it's bad, the writing he did. Zelda broke off their engagement, and Scott moved back to Minnesota, where he lived in the attic of his parents' house. That's when he did a rewrite of The Romantic Egotist, renaming it This Side of Paradise, and making it all about his time at Princeton and his tragic romantic failures. And this time, Scribner's publishing house was all the way on board. They sent him a telegram with the good news, and he ran through the streets of St. Paul, Minnesota, flagging down random cars and telling everyone that he was getting published.
Merry Christmas, you wonderful old building and loan.
Okay. To be clear, if someone stopped my cab to tell me they'd been published, I would spend the rest of my life trying to run them down like I was driving the evil car from the Stephen King book. Okay? Like I'm starting to be won over.
Maximum Overdrive? Yeah.
Christine,
Nice.
I think.
Christine, it's Christine. I
don't
it's
like
Christine.
books.
Scott-
Fuck you.
To be fair, there are multiple
The
evil
movie
car
one
books.
has evil cars
He
too.
needed a lot of cocaine in the
Yeah.
80s.
So, This Side of Paradise was a big hit, and with his newfound wealth, Scott moved to New York City with Zelda, where he spent most of his time being a giant piece of shit that nobody liked in all of New York City. He lived in luxury hotels the whole time, and the couple would spend most of their time getting drunk and bothering every single person in the building. They'd slide down banisters and do handstands and cartwheels in the lobby, and more importantly, harass the staff at the hotel like they're drunk Boston Cecil and drunk Marky Mark Eli in a sketch. Just horrible. After getting kicked out of the Biltmore Hotel, They moved 2 blocks down to the Commodore Hotel and spent half an hour just spinning around in the revolving door and drunkenly yelling stuff. Mostly anti-Semitic slur words, if I had to guess. And after a few years of doing that, he wrote The Great Gatsby.
Yeah. Podcast listener, Heath's going to exaggerate many things for the sake of japes and chicanery on this episode, but everything he just said about Scott and Zelda's behavior is 100% accurate.
It is.
Therefore, literally anything he says about Fitzgerald or his work is now fine. It's fine. You have to let it be fine.
With the exception of the ability to do cartwheels and the quality of places he was getting kicked out of, Heath is also describing all the shit he did when he was that age, too. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Slurs weren't
Well, they weren't anti-Semitic.
It's true.
Okay.
It's true.
You know, Heath, if you don't like drinking with me, you didn't have to write a long, boring essay about the Great Gatsby. You could have just sent me a message. It's fine.
I like drink arguing with you, Tom. It's the opposite. Okay, so now you got the context. He's a very bad writer and a very bad person.
Okay.
Let's talk about his book now. The Great Gatsby starts with the narrator, Nick Carraway, telling us that he wrote the book that we're reading right now. It's clunky. It's a clunky fucking start. And then the very first thing out of his mouth is, I'm not a bigot, which is not a good sign usually. And then he tells us about Jay Gatsby, a super rich guy with a mansion whose personality is, quote, gorgeous. And the story begins with Nick moving from Minnesota to New York to work in the bond business. He rents a house on Long Island in a town called West Egg, full of mostly obnoxious nouveau riche people like his neighbor Gatsby. We're supposed to feel empathy for Nick at this point. Nick, the Yale graduate who's working on Wall Street, and he's able to rent a house next to a Gothic mansion in one of the wealthiest zip codes in the world. We don't feel empathy for Nick.
As someone living next to not one, but 2 wealthy zip codes right now, you will never know my pain, Heath. You will never know my pain.
Pain noted. So, thanks to his Yale connections, Nick knows a bunch of people in the next town over called East Egg, where the people with old money are living. He drives over to East Egg and he has dinner with his cousin Daisy and her husband Tom, who is in the same social club as Nick at Yale. Tom was. Tom's wearing riding clothes at this moment because he's the fucking worst. And during dinner, Tom tells everyone about his favorite new book that he's reading called The Rise of the Colored Empires. It's all about eugenics and white supremacy.
You know how I only had like that one Time Life Science book in my house? This was the only book in Stephen Miller's house. This is the
Right.
one.
Yeah,
he had
right.
to
It's
grow
all
up.
coming together.
Still is. Yeah.
Wait, so this book, it starts off with a bunch of dude whose college friends are all more successful than him, and he starts off hating on a book. Heath, are you Nick Carraway? You have to tell us if you are.
I do not have to tell you. So this is when we meet a character named Jordan Baker as well. She's a friend of Daisy, who's a professional golfer, and she's also the absolute worst.
Heath, we actually get that. You said earlier she was a golfer, so kind of baked in.
So Jordan looks down her nose at Nick when they meet. Like, I mean, she actually tilts her head back so she can very literally look down her nose at him. So it's really good writing in that moment. So they're all talking about Mein Kampf 2 or whatever it was when the phone rings and Tom
prequel,
leaves
I
to
think.
answer the phone. Daisy follows Tom into the other room, and that's when Jordan, the golfer, explains to Nick that the call is very clearly from Myrtle, which is Tom's secret public mistress. Myrtle lives in a poor area with a very subtle name. It's called the Valley of Ashes.
Yeah. And Fitzgerald totally misses the opportunity to call her Tom's piece of ash in this book. He I'm coming around. I think that might not
He was a
be.
bit of an amateur, that Scott. Yeah.
Exactly,
Missed
yeah.
the wordplay. Thank you, everybody. So Tom and Daisy come back into the dining room after their messy whisper fight, and everyone finishes dinner. And as Nick's leaving at the end of the night, Tom and Daisy tell him to start dating Jordan, the snobby golfer. And he's like, great, love that idea. This is fantastic. He drives home, and as he's getting out of his car, he sees Gatsby standing in the giant yard by himself, reaching his arms out toward the water. We're going to find out he's doing that for a metaphor or a symbolism or some other book thing, whatever.
Oh, yeah, Heath, hard agree here. Symbolism and metaphor, very stupid. Literature should actually just read like vacuum cleaner instructions. That would actually help.
Thank you,
It'd be a richer
Tom.
world.
We're
It'd be a
finally
richer
agreeing
world
on
for all.
something.
Finally.
Just say what you mean with your words. Learn to communicate.
They are.
Weird liars.
Yeah, it's liars. It's a bunch
Lying.
of liars.
Both of you
Thanks,
guys are
Tom.
kind of reaching your arms out over a pond at each other right now. It's really amazing.
Cecil's gaslighting us right now. So apparently this
That's a
moment,
metaphor,
it's
though.
also
It is. It is.
so apparently this moment is also a physical display of yearning for Daisy by Gatsby. The water is a bay in the Long Island Sound that separates East Egg and West Egg. So he's reaching toward Daisy on the other side, but Nick doesn't know that yet. Right now, he just sees a green light out in the distance, and his weird millionaire neighbor is trying to grab the green light. And according to my high school teacher, that green light is going to be a fucking sweet metaphor about wanting stuff or something. Nobody cares. Whatever.
Keith, have you brought up this English teacher of yours in therapy yet? Because you might want to. You might just want to spend a lot of time.
Well, to be fair, Fitzgerald didn't have a meta podcast first to do things subtly like we do today.
Thank you, Inside Out, little girl. Thank you. Exactly.
What the fuck is happening right now?
Disappearing up our own ass, sir.
Press that button one more time. Clip clop. So now we're going to check out the Valley of Ashes. Nick and Tom ride their commuter train into Manhattan. And on the way, Tom makes Nick get off at one of the stops in the Ash Valley. And it's literally a town of ashes.
Now they just pile the garbage as tall as people on the side of the street. But before it was ashes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess they were doing it with ash back in the day. Apparently, New York City manufactures a good deal of ash, and they dump it in this one town. So the whole place is physically the color gray because of the ash. Most of the people who live there have a job as a shoveler of ashes. I guess they move it around or something. And this is where we get another very important metaphor. There's a giant billboard for an eye doctor who used to have a practice in the Valley of Ashes. And his big, unblinking eyes are constantly watching over the Valley of Ashes. And the metaphor is God, because the watching.
Mm-hmm. I just want to
Eyes.
remind you, Heath, this was written in 1924. Large swaths of New York City were definitely ashtrays in 1924. It's the most believable part of the book. That and a rich guy's an asshole. Most believable parts of this book.
Hey, sometimes I don't want the shovel, but I just reminds myself to stop whining and get off my ash, you know?
There had to be some good puns going on in the Valley of Ashes.
Totally.
Like that. Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely. I
Bunch
do
of
like that
assholes
part of
in
it.
there.
Yeah. But play that up if you're the writer. For Scott, get on your fucking game.
Get on your pun game.
Call your sports team the Ash Pickers. I mean, there's so much.
So many.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Lazy
so many
writing.
so many opportunities missed.
Too busy doing cartwheels.
So they're in the Valley of Ashes, and Tom takes Nick to see Myrtle, his mistress. She lives with her husband, George, who has a used car garage.
Also a metaphor.
Yes, exactly. What is that a metaphor?
Yikes.
It doesn't matter.
Don't
so
worry about it.
George is, I won't understand even if you tell me. Like, I'll be like, blah, 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 that's you. So George is one of the few people in town who I guess doesn't move ashes from one pile to another as his job. Tom starts the interaction with George by taunting George with a fake offer about selling a car, which was weird. And when George walks away for a second, Tom tells Myrtle to hop on the train with them to Manhattan to do some affair stuff. So they do that. They get into the city. Myrtle, at this moment, buys a dog from a random guy on the street who has a basket of loose puppies for sale. That happens. And then they head over to Tom's extra apartment that he keeps for the affair. Nick wants to split up at this point and presumably go to his job of work that he has, but Tom insists on having him hang out for a while.
I'm not holding your girlfriend's new puppy and watching you guys fuck. I know what
That's
I know
clearly
what that's
that was.
leading to. Yeah.
I mean, depending on the puppy, it doesn't matter. So now it's time for a nice little day drinking party. And I actually enjoyed this part of the book. This was fun.
No, you.
Okay. Not just because of the day drinking. It's basically just a long description of being at a party for hours and hating every single person.
Okay, and also pro tip, if you're this guy, stay home. You're not fun or interesting. Just stay home. Don't go to the party. Fine.
That's what I do, Tom. Thank you.
Know thyself.
The whole time.
Know thyself.
This
whole
essay's
time.
tearing our podcast apart, everybody.
So Tom invites a random couple to the weird day party, the McKees, and Myrtle invites her sister. My favorite part is Mr. McKee having a big patch of spittle on the side of his mouth the whole time, and Nick cannot stop staring at the spittle with silent rage, just smoldering the whole time. But then the book goes right back to terrible at the end of the night when Tom slaps Myrtle in the face and breaks her nose.
Oh.
And rather than do anything about that, Mr. McKee and Nick just leave. So that was extremely upsetting. But according to the fucking book people, we get two very important literary elements here. One is that people are bad, fascinating. And the other is a rumor about Gatsby that we learned during the party. He might be the nephew or perhaps the cousin of Kaiser Wilhelm. So now we're intrigued.
And now we've come full circle. The spittle on the side of the mouth of English teachers all across the country is the Great Gatsby. That's a metaphor. Don't punch me, Heath. I'm sorry. I
Right?
didn't
Yeah.
mean it.
Yeah, no, Heath hates metaphors like, never mind. I'm done.
Yeah. Oh no, you were about to do a simile. You
Yeah,
were-
our simile's safe. I was going to say, you never know.
So the next day, Nick gets an invitation to attend one of Gatsby's famous lavish parties at his mansion. And that evening, he walks over to the big mansion and he tries to mingle at the party. But everyone sucks because, of course, it's a bunch of rich people on Long Island. Eventually, Nick runs into Jordan, the golfer, and they walk around the party trying to find the mysterious host. They finally do meet Gatsby briefly, and he also sucks. He tries to sound smart and like formal or whatever, saying per se all the time for no reason. And he calls everybody old sport, talks kind of like that. And this is the 20s. So I imagine everyone was talking like that, which means Gatsby was talking normal, but with like extra obnoxious tone somehow. They didn't like it either.
I like the idea of him just turning around and being like, shit, sorry. Turns out the host of the party's an incorrect correction email, everybody. We should bounce. Bourbon's only in Kentucky.
So the party finally ends and Nick walks back to his house. He sees two drunken idiots who tried to drive home and they immediately ran their car into a ditch. That was fun. And then he feels bad about just morality in general. So he starts narrating to rationalize himself to the readers of this book that might be judging him in this moment. He explains that he's very deep and complex, actually, if you think about it. He doesn't just attend parties with bad people. He enjoys walking and he's had sex with a woman. He actually tells us both of those things for real. And then we learn that he's dating Jordan, that snooty golfer. And then he adds, yeah, she cheated in her first professional golf tournament, but I still really like her. I'm actually the most honest person, though. Reader, okay, right? Reader, that's locked in that I'm honest? Great. And that's the end of the chat.
It occurs to me at this point that my protagonist might not be likable. Oh, so I'll have him tell the reader that he is, in fact, likable.
That's what happens.
Yeah, you laugh, Noah, but that fooled 74 million people in 2020. So,
No, that's
Yeah.
true.
What book
That's true.
prepared them for it, Tom? What book?
Exactly.
what book indeed?
Yeah, Trump voters weren't reading. But from there, Nick tells us about the time he went to lunch with Gatsby in the city one time. On the ride, Nick tries to learn about this mysterious millionaire guy, but everything Gatsby says is a very obvious lie. Gatsby claims to be from a rich family in the Midwest, but when Nick asks what part, Gatsby says San Francisco. Gatsby also claims to be an Oxford scholar, an international jewel baron, a big game hunter, and a spy hero during World War I.
Ooh, he's going to get expelled from Congress any second now, y'all. This is not going well.
He's actually really close on Long Island to like where fucking Santos is from. Yeah.
Gatsby's actually on Cameo now. You can pick him up on Cameo. It's
He's
great.
making a fortune on Cameo. I'm so mad. I also got Eli a gift of Cameo.
Yeah.
George Santos.
Look out for our new show, Cammy. Oh, no, you didn't.
the worst title ever.
Clip clop. You want to hit the button real quick one more time?
All my ideas aren't killed by the button. That's not how it works. That's a different button. I have that one at my house.
Oh, God. So they get to the city for lunch, and during lunch, Gatsby introduces Nick to a guy named Meyer Wolfsheim, who helped rig the 1919 World Series.
I wonder what religion that guy is.
Yeah, no,
it's religion.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
No
No,
idea.
very clearly meant to be a reference to Arnold Rothstein, but like Jewisher in the name. And this whole thing is meant to tip us off that Gatsby's wealth might be derived from his ties to the mob or to the globalist Illuminati with the New York sense of humor. It's just some mild anti-Semitism during mid-1920s. It's no big deal. What's the worst that could happen with that? Not a big deal. After lunch, Nick meets up with Jordan, and she tells him that Gatsby gave her some hot gossip during the party. Gatsby, it turns out, is in love with Daisy. They met in Kentucky when Gatsby was stationed at an army base, but then Gatsby got shipped off to the war, and Daisy married Tom. And the whole reason Gatsby bought a mansion in West Egg was to be near Daisy again and try to get her back. Gatsby actually has a plan for that. He wants Nick to invite Daisy over for tea, and then Gatsby can ambush Daisy, but with love. It's a love ambush plan.
Well, while we try to figure out if love ambush is a real thing or just a metaphor for cheating at tennis, we're going to take a quick break for a little apropos of nothing.
Nick, thanks for coming, old boy.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Have you met Muller Miller?
It's all about stocks, my boy. Stocks and bonds.
That's an insane way to introduce yourself. Hi, Nick.
No time, Nick. And this is the lovely Sheridan Square.
Not on this boat ride, I ain't.
Oh, Sheridan, you never know with him.
Sorry, can people see me? I feel like you all have lines prepared and you can't see me.
Please come with me out to the patio.
Literally just walked into the house.
What do you know of love, Nick?
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of love, I would say
You know,
that,
as a man looks
just-
over life,
You're just talking again, right?
one begins
for
to
what I'm
wonder
saying.
how a man takes a claim
Respond
of a
to
situation.
what I'm saying.
And I do suppose that my intention, there's only been one place where that heart lands, on the boat ridge. You catch my meaning, Nick?
You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take
That
off.
heart has landed with Daisy Buchanan. Oh, he's gone.
I'll be the country bumpkin.
Not now, Sheridan.
Scorn candle. When we left off, we were learning about the exciting life of fictional golfing racists that cheat in 1920. In the 2000s, we just elect them president. So what happened next here, Keith?
All right. So Nick gets home from lunch in the city with Moishi Hanukkah bagel or whatever it was.
Jesus
And
Christ.
he's walking into his house, and Gatsby jumps out of nowhere and starts offering a bunch of favors and invitations. Gatsby's obviously buttering up Nick before asking the favor about setting up the love ambush. Nick eventually does agree to help, and then we cut ahead to the day of the big meeting for tea. Gatsby's waiting inside Nick's house at this moment, but when Daisy shows up, Gatsby is gone. But then there's a knock on the front door. Gatsby ran out the back, went around the side of the house in the rain, and now he's at the front door, sopping wet, and he's just, quote, stopping over by chance. And when he comes inside, he's all nervous for this big meeting. So he almost knocks over the antique clock on Nick's mantle. And this is a pretty sweet literary moment. I'll give everybody a second to process that sweet fucking symbolism that happened just now. The clock. You guys want a couple more seconds? The clock represents Gatsby's desire to go back in time. Clocks.
You can let this
to
go.
when he and Daisy were a couple in Kentucky. So despite the initial awkwardness, Gatsby and Daisy end up having a very happy reunion. After a few hours of catching up, Gatsby invites Daisy and Nick back to his mansion to celebrate some more, and to show off his many leather-bound books and his amazing collection of English shirts. Those are shirts from the country of England, apparently. And Daisy weeps with joy at the shirts. Confusing. And this was not clear from the book at this point, but I guess their love is fully rekindled now. And Gatsby at this moment yells, "Hey, Clipspringer, come play for us." Who? Who the fuck is Clipspringer, you might ask? Great question. Some guy named something that sounds pretty Nazi lives at the mansion with Gatsby, and he plays them a song on the piano called "Ain't We Got Fun." And this is when Nick realizes that absolutely nobody's talking to him or even looking at him, so he just slowly backs out of the room and goes home.
Well, and can I say it's about fucking time? Dude is obviously trying to fuck your cousin, bro. He told you he was trying to fuck your cousin. Did you really think he wanted to invite you to his place to see his shirts?
Yeah, that's his bad for showing up for the shirt showing. I agree. That's true.
Can I choose a song that Clipspringer plays now? Oh, you guys are kissing. Okay.
Anybody got a puppy
Springer's in
for me
on
to
it.
hold or what?
He really got shirt shrift on that one.
Nice. Shirt. So now that we have some kind of romantic plot established, Fitzgerald grinds the action to a screeching halt. Nick, the narrator, basically calls a fucking timeout on the book and then turns to the camera in the movie and says, "Wait, I fucking forgot to explain something that you would need to have known already." It's like a little kid fucking up a long-form joke, the author. And now he tells us the actual backstory of Gatsby rather than all the rumors and lies that we've heard so far. We learn that Jay Gatsby was born James Gatz on a farm in North Dakota. And coincidentally, young James had the exact same childhood as Scott Fitzgerald. So after dropping out of prep school, James Gatz was digging for clams in Lake Superior. That was his summer job, I guess. And he met a wealthy copper mogul who took James on his yacht and hired him as a personal assistant. They then traveled the world on the yacht, and when the copper mogul died, he left James a big inheritance. But the rich guy's widow prevented James from ever getting that money, so James vowed to just become a rich guy to make up for that. And somehow he just made that happen. So now he calls himself Jay Gatsby instead of James Gatz because it sounds more rich guy-esque. That's the backstory.
Wondered about that because it feels like Fitzgerald was 9/10 of the way through a rich uncle millionaire backstory. And then Zelda was like, "Oh, that's pretty stereotypical. Is that what you're doing?" And he was like, "No, that doesn't happen. It happens another way is how it happened."
All right, so now it's a few weeks later, and Gatsby has another big party. And since we're well into Act 2, the motifs, of course, have to build. So there's a big uptick in the level of disillusionment about these parties now. Even Daisy has a bad time. Gatsby finds Nick after the party and mentions how he noticed that literary device was really building. They both find that to be quite odd. Gatsby also whines about how Daisy hasn't ended her marriage with Tom yet. Gatsby just wants everything to be the same as it was in Kentucky when they first fell in love. And Nick, at this point, explains to Gatsby that it's impossible for Daisy to live up to the rosy memories and that you can't, I'm turning to camera, recreate, looking at me, the past. And Gatsby was like, "You keep looking at something. What is that?" And that's the end of the chapter.
I feel like there's like 40 different times that Rod Serling could have walked out and made this an actual good story. Thank you.
All right, Cecil
It was so much
Fitzgerald.
better.
Cecil Fitzgerald had the choice of making an actual good story or making a literary classic. He chose his path.
Exactly. Thank you.
So now we move ahead to the hottest day of the summer. This is a lot like Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And Nick is having lunch in East Egg at Tom and Daisy's house. When he arrives, he's surprised to see that Gatsby and Jordan the golfer are also there. But they explain how, it's a main character lunch right before the climax, so that's totally normal. So the vibes at this lunch, they're absolutely unbearable, and Daisy invites Gatsby to go into the city with her. Tom, at this moment, becomes fully convinced about the affair, so he says, "Yes, that is a great idea. Let's all go into the city together." And they're all like, yup, we're all agreeing to this. This is great. I love this. Let's
we
all
should
go.
start a podcast. Let's do a
So they all go into the city. They get a suite at the plaza for another day drinking party at a hotel. They have mint juleps, which represent coldness, things that are cold. And it also represents Kentucky from the unrecreatable past. Nailed it. And this is when Tom finally confronts Gatsby about the affair, and they argue for a while. Somehow the argument makes Daisy start loving Tom again, and sensing the win, Tom sends Daisy back to Long Island with just Gatsby as like a demonstration of his dominance, I think.
Why don't you take my wife home and not fuck her great, if that is your real name?
So Daisy and Gatsby leave together, and then Nick, Tom, and Jordan get into another car to head back as well. On the way, they drive through the Valley of Ash Piles and Metaphors, and they see a dead body on the road. Turns out it's Tom's mistress, Myrtle, and a witness saw her get killed by a hit-and-run driver in a big yellow rich guy car. So immediately, they all know it was Gatsby. They get back to Tom and Daisy's house, and Nick finds Gatsby hiding in the bushes. So Gatsby explains that Daisy was actually driving at the moment, but that he's going to take the blame for the hit and run. Then Nick goes inside to check on Daisy, and apparently Tom and Daisy are just totally cool now. They're just hanging out, eating fried chicken together, no problems. So Nick leaves, and Gatsby just stands there in the dark for a while. End of chapter.
I feel like there's a bit of a hint of if only someone had been stopping traffic to tell strangers about their book getting published underlying that entire scene.
The self-insert.
So the next morning, Nick talks to Gatsby and tells him to give up on trying to get Daisy back. And Gatsby is like, no, I don't want to. And he refuses like a child, almost exactly like that. From there, Nick narrates the story of what happened with Myrtle and her husband, George. So right before she got killed by the car, she confessed to her husband to having the affair. And the morning after the accident, George, the husband, walks outside and sees the big unblinking eyes of the eye doctor on that billboard. Reminder, he's the God metaphor. And the doctor's name is T.J. Eckelberg, which I don't know why I did this, but it anagrams to beg, cult, jerk. And that's a pretty good description of the God of the Bible. So I found that amusing. Anyway, George looks at the eyes of God and decides that whoever killed Myrtle must have been her lover. There's no reason for him to believe that, but he does. He also decides that God wants revenge. So George now heads out to find the owner of the fancy yellow car and get revenge.
A lot of steps, George. You're doing a lot of lateral.
Yeah. So George goes to Tom's house because he saw Tom driving a car like that earlier in the day, but he assumes that Tom wasn't driving when Myrtle got hit because Tom shows up at the scene right after the accident in a different car with Nick and Jordan. So after talking with Tom, George heads over to Gatsby's house. He finds Gatsby in the pool and he shoots Gatsby dead. And then George immediately kills himself too. According to most literary scholars, that's a metaphor about not knowing how to end a sketch, I think.
Or is it literary genius?
It's one or the other. It's one or the other. It's also meant to represent how rich people like Tom and Daisy can be terrible for society and still end up getting away with murder while happily eating chicken and not caring.
I love how he's so in the bit now that he's making fun of Eli's literary prowess by comparing him to F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of the greatest Englishers in the history of English.
Agreed. A lot in common with F. Scott. I hear it all the time.
Keats and Scott sure are, buddy.
And Proust.
So later
And
that
Proust.
day, Nick finds Gatsby dead in the pool. And apparently Scott wanted to have Gatsby say more stuff about disillusionment and emptiness motifs, but the author had accidentally killed his own goddamn character before that could happen.
But he had a clone guy, so he made a new one, and it's totally fine.
See? Sadly, no. Instead,
Not
We
at
get
my
Nick-
level.
It's true. That's what I'm talking about. So instead, we get Nick describing what he assumes were Gatsby's final thoughts and emotions. Mostly it was harumph. Gatsby also thought to
This
himself,
will be mine.
you know what? My life would be a great American novel. And that's the end of the story. So from there, we just do a little wrap up. We fast forward 2 years, and Nick tells us the story of the funeral he held for Gatsby. Pretty much nobody showed up because, Gatsby kind of sucked. And then all that's left is a sad little segment with Nick musing more thoughts to himself. He decides that it's a story about how cosmopolitan cities are bad and the rural Midwest is good. Fucking stupid. So he moves back to Minnesota to be a wholesome Christian. The end. That's seriously the end of the book.
I
All
don't think that's the end of the book.
That's the end of the book. So before we close it out, I'm curious what everyone thought of the book overall. Maybe I'm wrong. What's your score from 1 to 10 for this book?
I never read it, but lack of knowledge has never been an impediment to an opinion on citation needed. Why would it start now? I'm going to give it a 7.5.
7.5. Okay.
All right, look, Heath, I'll give you Catcher in the Rye. That was easy. But Gatsby, no. What is your heart even made of? This is an 8.5 solid.
8.5.
8.5 solid.
Eli, did you love this book?
9 out of 10 Bosniks is what I would give it. Not quite podcast diverse
Interesting.
levels of brilliance, but he gets there. There's a couple,
Okay.
beat backwards towards the arc
But
or
lots
whatever.
of missed pun work. So
Yeah, and lots of missed pun work and the ashes and all that. Yeah.
Heath, if you had to summarize what you learned
There's a poor person who gets revenge. I didn't
in
love
one
it.
sentence, what would it be?
I don't get books. I'm not a reader. I don't know. I'm sure this is a great fucking book, whatever. I just say what you mean. I don't like
Okay, all right.
liars.
To remove the HEPA filter, pull on the tab to the left.
Hey, are you ready for the quiz, Heath?
Sure, why the fuck not?
All right, Heath. You obviously had some fun at the Great Gatsby's expense on this episode, but the novel contains some great lessons, which I think we shouldn't overlook. Which of the following is the most important? A. Monogamy is stupid.
Hey,
That is correct. We did it, everybody. We
Nice.
found it. We found the great lesson behind the Great Gatsby.
slavery. Read The Ethical Slut.
All right, Heath, clearly.
It's a book where they just say what they mean.
No metaphor.
All right, Heath, clearly The Great Gatsby is, as you mentioned, a quote, bad book, end quote. So which of these terribly written lines from Gatsby is the worst?
Don't do this.
A.
Don't do this.
So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. B. I like large parties. They're so intimate. At small parties, there isn't any privacy.
Nice.
Yogi Berra.
C. The exhilarating ripple of her voice was a wild tonic in the rain. D. They slipped briskly into an intimacy from which they never recovered. I'm wondering which of those awful, hideous, disgusting lines of no, which
Lot of metaphors.
you hated the most.
Lot of metaphors there.
I didn't even understand a single thing you just said. I was like,
Thank you.
Okay. Keith,
Keith,
I don't have a question here, but I would just like to pause for a second and boo Tom's question if I can. So A, boo. B, boo. C, boo. Or D, boo.
fantastic question. The answer is E, all of the above.
Oh, you got it. Congratulations. Well done.
All right, Heath. Yeah, literature's dumb. When am I
Thank
ever
you.
going to need to know any of this crap? A,
You won't.
when I'm trying to speak smart people code without being understood by the uncouth masses.
Ooh, that's the one I do.
B,
But
When-
this doesn't even work for that. Actual smart people will be like, oh, you're doing a high school book? Okay.
B,
Don't interrupt.
when I'm trying to impress a woman I'm not remotely going to impress. C,
Okay.
when I'm doing whatever the fuck job it is that Tom does, where I'm sure his literature degree comes in handy all the time. Or D, when I'm trying to convince myself that F. Scott Fitzgerald would be jealous of my podcast fame.
Wow.
Would.
He would be.
He would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
D.
Oh, damn it. That's correct.
That's correct.
Sure is.
Oh, Heath, you win this week. You win.
Nice. All right. Next week, let's get a little Noah.
Okay. Well, for Tom, Noah, Eli, and Heath, I'm Cecil. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week. And by then, Noah will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, read a book. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod, or you can leave us a 5-star review anywhere you can. If you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes. Check out citationpod.com.
Bonds and stocks. Stocks and bonds.
Like the shell of an oyster, old boy.
I'm stealing things.
Classic Irishman.
Bonds.
Clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop.
Crushed it. Bravo. Well done. One take. So good. That's amazing. Tom, that's like interpretive dance with your mouth. Way to go.
Absolutely.
Bravo.
And they'll get it.
Someone's
Someone
gonna
out there
get
will
it.
I heard maybe I'm not leaving. Maybe I
Maybe
heard
I'm
it.
going. We all heard it. We all heard it.
So good.
What's important is that you felt it.
So good.
That's right. Snubbed for the Oscar this year, Tom. If you don't get it, fucking snubbed.